Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Bridge Broadcast Show. My name is Tina Boyle White, and I am the host of the Bridge Broadcast Show, where we focus on getting you from where you are to where you want and need to be in life. And we focus on the spirit, soul, and the body, really helping each of those areas really cross over that bridge in whatever area you're in. This morning, I just want to thank WYTV7 for the opportunity to be able to bring messages to you, our audience, where we focus on getting you from where you are to where you want and need to be in life. And this season, this is season 5 for me. I'm excited. I am bringing more information to help you be whole and healthy. And it's no different from what we have done in the past seasons. I have Dr. Chena Anderson, a doctor of naturopath, with me this morning. And it's significant that I share this with you because I met Dr. Chena on my journey. I want to say it was last year, January, in Washington, D.C. And the amazing part of me meeting her, I was in Washington, D.C. for some work, and there was a health show. And I saw people coming out of the show with bags. And I was about a block away from my hotel, and I just asked the people. I was on the metro train in DC, and I said, "What's going on? What are you guys doing?" And I just followed the crowd. And as I followed the crowd, I was led to meet Dr. Chena Anderson, and my life has not been the same after meeting her. I'm so blessed and so honored to have her on the show this morning. Dr. Chena Anderson, welcome this morning.
Thank you.
Yes. So glad to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yes, you know what? I always like to start the shows. I shared a little bit about my journey. Are you willing to share with the audience, how did you come to this place of being a doctor of naturopath?
So, yeah, absolutely. So, I've been married 28 years. And prior to meeting my husband, we met in the mission field. We were in the children's ministry together that toured all over the world, actually. I was a clown, and he was a hobo in the children's ministry. You don't get glorified positions in a children's ministry. And but prior to meeting him, when I was in college, I was always sickly. Okay, I was a child who had a lot of respiratory problems, predominantly respiratory issues, but they went on year round. So it wasn't just colds and flus in the winter. It was allergies throughout the summer, and that led to a lot of steroid use, which is common with allergies. It led to a lot of antibiotic use, and it really destroyed the gut flora. But I didn't know any of that. My parents didn't know or understand any of that. We weren't conscious about our diet because that wasn't something that they taught. I'm not sure they teach it well in schools today, but they didn't teach it at all when my mom was going through school. So there was no concept that, believe it or not, Pepsi is not good for a breakfast, okay? And we started our day not with coffee, but it was not uncommon to have Coke or Pepsi with breakfast. That was the stimulant to get you into the day. And we didn't know any better. Like, it's just that simple. And sugar donuts are also not a breakfast food. My children today, when they hear me tell my story, they say, in their minds, they literally think your mom didn't love you. Like, that's what runs through their mind, because in our home, part of how we express our love is how we feed each other. So we grew up very heavy sugar diet. So I remember lots of dental work being done as a child. Now, I haven't had a single filling since I was 19. So I began to change my health just at the end of college, when I became more conscious, of my own personal journey. And it was out of, I had an extreme anaphylactic response. At the time, I thought it was to a bug bite, because I had been out jogging on the track and I had a little bug bite on the back of my neck. And very shortly after, I got home, had breakfast, and that's when I went into respiratory distress. And I took Benadryl and all the stuff, that Sudafed these were the things back in that time that we would have had on hand. And I still had to go to the doctor. Like, I couldn't get it under control. And by that point, my eyes were swollen, my lips were swelling. It was bad. And they never identified what it was, but it's happened 3 times in my life. including that time, and all of them I had eaten pancake batter.
Mm.
Had made a pancake, and several different years. I mean, it happened even after I was married and had children, and it happened one time. And in all cases, I was at my mother's home, and I had fixed pancakes. And you may not know this, but pancake batter, and actually cake batters as well, have an ingredient that goes bad and turns on the human nervous system about a year after the box is made. So
Wow.
why that's out there for you to pull out of your cabinet. My mom wasn't a big cook and still isn't. So that box was over a year old. It had to be, because I didn't know that. Now, years later, my mother sent me an article she'd cut out of the newspaper that listed that ingredient. And she says, I bet this is what did that to you. Because it always happened in her house. And it was always the pancake. My sister-in-law happened to be there, and she was the one that noticed, because she'd been there twice out of the 3 times. And every time I'd had pancake right before it started. And it's not a common food I eat. I mean, now we make everything from scratch. We never have to worry about that. But anyway, that happened. And because of that, like I could have died. I couldn't take a breath. And I was very ill that entire day, even with all the medical intervention. And after that, I started realizing that there was something at the core that was very wrong with my health, and I needed to solve it, or I might not be here much longer. And I had always had a sense, I've been a Christian since I was 7. I was raised in I will say, a Christian home. They weren't deeply spiritual, but they took us to church every Sunday. But I always had this sense that God always placed a solution right at hand. And I believe that in the natural. If I walk out in my yard, I can show you some antitoxins that are like growing in the grass. It's like I had this inner belief. I don't really know how that was going to play out, but I had this inner belief. And I remember having a conversation in college with a friend who had come to visit, and we were just eating at Pizza Hut, having a health meal at Pizza Hut. And he said, we were talking, he was a Christian too, and we were talking. And I remember saying that. Now, at that season in my life, I was still taking drugs to solve, like a respiratory thing or an allergy response or something. So I hadn't really tapped into what that was, but I remember having that conversation and thinking, I believe this at my core. I know this is truth. This is God's truth. And it was very shortly after that, I was in the Charlottesville Mall. I live in Virginia. And I was in the mall, and this is before Bath and Body was a company, but there was a shop like that had more natural products, which was a new thing. That wasn't normal to find natural products 30 years ago. I realized how long I've been out of college. Okay. It seems like the other day, but it wasn't. And I walked in, and they had this book, and it was a European book. I've never been able to find it again, but it was something about the A to Z of aromatherapy. And it caught my eye, and I kind of glanced through it. I think I bought an eye cream, and I left the store with my little book. I wound up doing a research paper on aromatherapy for a class I was taking that was a health ed class. By the way, the instructor who wore tube socks, nothing against people that wear tube socks, okay? But you know the type, he was a phys ed teacher, but he taught this health ed. That was required for every student who was going to become a school teacher, okay?
Wow.
Well, he didn't like my topic. So he wound up giving me a C on that paper and told me it was not a health-related topic.
Wow.
Well, anyway, so we'll leave him behind and move on. But I learned so much while reading that book about ways to help, because I had this sense that if I kept taking these drugs, I was going to die. It was going to kill me.
Right.
And what was my convincer was, I had this sense that every time I took only legal drugs, okay, prescribed drugs. I had a brother who became a heroin addict, actually. So every family has problems. And so I never took anything illicit or illegal. But yet, even when I would take things that I was taking because I was in distress, I had this sense that it wasn't helping me. It was actually in some way not helping my health move forward. So when I was about 21, I was 2 weeks from leaving on a study tour to Mexico. I did a Spanish degree way back when. And as I was preparing for the trip, one day I broke out in hives in my hair all the way down my body to the pads of my feet. There was nowhere that did not have hives all over it. And I was itching. It was the whole thing. It wasn't just looking bad. I was itching. And so the doctors put me on steroids. And every 2 days, they increased the dose of steroids So by the time I left for my trip, I was on a mega dose of prednisone, and it didn't stop the itching, and it didn't stop the hives. It just toxified my liver. So I was on this study tour for 2 weeks, and while there, my liver bloated out of my skin. You could see it. I have pictures of me on a boat in a bikini, and my liver is sitting out from my body almost as much as the breast area, if you can imagine that. And I broke out in tumors under my face, because those are all side effects of steroid use. And I'd always had nice skin. So imagine 21 years old, getting ready to go into my senior year of college. I come back and I gained 10 pounds in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And the liver. So I come back, I go back to the same general practitioners in our town. There were 4 of them that worked in one office. I'd seen all of them, every one of them only upped the dose of the steroids. I walk into the office, sit down, wait for my appointment. She comes around the corner, never touched me, never even walked in the room, diagnosed me, and told me it was the steroids that had caused all that.
Wow.
I'm still covered in hives. It had never changed. And it was actually the pharmacist who identified where the hives came from, and it was from an antibiotic I had taken 6 months before.
Wow.
And what I didn't know that the pharmacist informed me of is that an antibiotic that causes a toxic allergic reaction, side effect, whatever you want to call it, can show up as many as 12 months after you take it. So you would never think the two were related, or even think to check that. So that was like big red, bells and whistles going off in my mind that something, and I literally walked out of that doctor's office when she told me that what they gave me in massive doses had caused all this. I walked out and I was determined I was never taking another drug in my life. And I haven't. So I have now been drug-free. It sounds strange to say it that way, but drug-free for 29 years.
29 years.
20 years. So I have 10 children. Yes, one for every finger. 10 children. They were all born at home. They were all born drug-free. They were all raised drug-free. With the exception of a broken bone, only one of them has seen a doctor to set the bone, and he was given morphine at the instance that they put the bone in place. Otherwise, no one's ever had anything.
And what is the ages of your children?
So my youngest little guy is 7 now, and my oldest is 26. And in between, it's a son, 4 daughters, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and we call him the last unicorn because he's the last of his kind.
I love it. Wow.
So, and raised, and the really cool thing is, as we've gone through our journey, we have been able to teach them. So it's so cool to see my little guy tell his friends when they get hurt what to do, or tell his little church friends what to take when they're sick. I mean, because it's been part of the culture of our home.
Right.
Again, the beauty in, my older kids, I have 5, I have 2 in college, 3 that are in the workforce, adults, grown, done with college. And then I have 5 still homeschooled. Yes, we homeschooled too. And not that makes me, people call me super mom. No, Elastigirl, because you got to keep stretching and changing to deal with whatever's coming at you. But the older ones, what's the beauty to me of all this is watching them succeed you. Live a life isn't that the American dream, right? To give your child a better life than you had. For me, yes, certainly I would like them to have a prosperous life on a financial standpoint, have the things that I didn't have or that I couldn't give them. But it's more important to me that they never, ever have to suffer the health I had.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I became a naturopath. I had my first child. He was a little over a year, and I was a school teacher, and that was what I always wanted to do, was teach. That I knew that when I was 7 years old, I knew I was called to teach. But I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I think a lot of times our life, we have this picture we think, and I felt called to the mission field. So in my mind, I'm in a hut in Africa. Like that was the mission field to me, and when we had missionaries come to church, that was the kind of missionaries we had, it was people that went to other countries. And so I did a Spanish degree thinking I would minister to a Hispanic country. That was my plan. And what the Lord did instead was he put me in a very unique mission field, which is the health field, because there's so much Misinformation, sometimes lies. I mean, I've had clients that come and they come when they're at their end. They
Yeah.
don't come at the beginning when a problem starts. Now, I have clients now, I've been a naturopath for 25 years.
Yes.
Because of that, I have about 3,000 clients of record over that span of time.
Wow.
What's really neat now is a lot of my adult clients now were children that
Wow.
were little children. So what I'm getting to see, which is so fun, is I'm now getting to minister to 3 or 4 generations of
Right.
this family. And I love that because that's been a big piece of who I am, is to leave a legacy. So what I'm seeing now but their referrals are the people who have done everything medical, and they've now come here half dead and hope I can help them. And so if I could have a message to anyone who's listening is don't pshaw alternatives, because alternatives once were all there was.
Yeah.
They, the beginning of how God created things was actually these herbs of the field and these essential oils and things that was actually, they're biblical. The other is not, it always has a cost. That's what the steroid they gave me that helped would take away those hives had a huge cost. It took me 7 years to detox that out of my system.
Wow.
So that's a long time to still be dealing with the side effects of a drug.
My God.
Yeah.
7 years. Thank you so much for sharing that journey because, you know, again, I met you on my journey and my journey of a diagnosis and other things that are in my body. And as we are speaking now, you are literally analyzing, my body, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit about how you are going to help me. And then we'll probably wrap this show up and continue on with the next show around immune health. So tell us a little bit about what it is that I sent you and what it will do.
Okay, so I use a system called bioresonance. Bioresonance is a way of assessing the meridian health. So we know from Chinese medicine, which has been around over 600 years at this point. So we're not talking about new technology, but ancient wisdom that has existed and now been very well documented since the 60s. Its scientific validity has been totally shown to be accurate. Unfortunately, they did the studies with rabbits and all the rabbits died because they injected them with radioactive material. We don't want to do that on a human, but we know that those meridians are real. So one of the things that the system we use is it assesses the meridian health. Then it assesses the organ health. Then it assesses the neurochemistry. So your neurochemistry has to do with both your emotional and also your neurons are what take in signals, say from your big toe if you stump it, or from your hand if you burn it. So we want our neurotransmitters to be healthy. It assesses that. Then it assesses the nutritional health of the body. Are we missing certain nutrients? Are we deficient? Are we in excess, say, of a heavy metal that we've ingested from something we were unaware? People don't realize your foods can have heavy metals in them just based on the country they came from.
Hmm.
In some cases, soils are heavy laden with heavy metals. So it's not that carrot is bad in and of itself, but it may have taken up something out of the soil and you may be eating it and not aware of it. So it assesses the nutritional health of the body. It assesses the spine and the dental health of the body. So it'll actually tell you which vertebrae are chronically out of place and which ones are struggling. And from that, I teach a class on what each vertebrae is spiritually, because believe it or not, your spiritual health is directly linked to your spinal health. So when you think about the spine, that is about the structure of your life. And so each vertebrae uniquely has what is called a spirit point. So it's about a spiritual alignment issue in your life. So if you're chronically having trouble with, if I recall, C3 has to do with faith. And I was recently working with a gentleman, and I was telling him, and I was hesitant to go into this part of the assessment with him because he was a pastor, and I was like, he might be offended by this, because the two that were out for him were faith and forgiveness. And I didn't want him to feel judged, but I wanted him to be informed. And he goes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And
Wow.
tell whatever it was, whatever issue was going on. But it was interesting. He completely confirmed that indeed, but it was affecting his neck, like the pain and the level of stress on the neck. So we assess that as well. And then we look at amino acids because the body cannot reconnect itself, rebuild itself without amino acids that make the protein that make your muscles and that make your blood. So we assess that. So it's a really all-inclusive, I mean, it's extremely dynamically all-inclusive in addressing so many things. And it also looks at hormonal health. So for both men and women, men like to think they don't have hormonal issues, but indeed they do. So for example, men have the same hormones as women.
Wow.
Okay, most people don't know that. So we know that women who are low on testosterone have no drive to procreate. Okay, so there's no sexual drive. But the same is true of men. Well, what one element of why men would have low testosterone is if they had high levels of the luteinizing hormone, which again, they have those hormones, they just have them in smaller amounts. But luteinizing hormone in a woman makes her more fertile, makes her more able to accept the sperm and make a baby.
Yes.
So if he has high levels of that, his testosterone level is low. And so we look at those things as well, because if that shows up, then I know that that man, just like the woman, would not have a drive to procreate. And that also means he doesn't have a drive to maybe go to work or to get the projects done at home or to tackle anything new emotionally or spiritually that he's dealing with. Our drive as humans is directly linked to our testosterone level. So we look at all those things, and then from that we create a very concise program for that person. So there's no two people that the program's the same. And then quite honestly, if we did it, say 4 times a year in different seasons, the program will be dynamically different because our bodies change. What we eat changes. Our stress level changes. Our activity levels changes. Like we're going into fall, winter here. Fall will be a busy season for us. Outdoors, we'll be spending more time outside because we're going to be raking leaves and, doing get these things done before winter hits. When winter hits, we're going to have a very dynamically different diet. We're going to eat more stews, less salads. So there's things that change about our routines in the seasons. And so we address that as we look at the person at that season in their life.
Amazing. Oh my God. Wow. You really hit it, that your health is a spiritual journey. And I'm so glad that you brought it out for, the example about the pastor, because oftentimes as Christians, if it doesn't align with what we're thinking, we think it's something different.
Yeah.
And I just want to let you say one last word for this segment for the audience. What is one thing, as we've both talked about our journeys, that one final thought you can share with the audience about their journey?
So I love the name of your show, The Bridge. So my website is myname.ChinaAnderson.com, and I have an image of a bridge. And I talk, so the focus of my work in health is about taking you, it was your theme, taking you from where you are and taking you where you're going. And in my work, a lot of times it's about the mental spiritual state as well as the health state. Like you can't take the person apart in pieces, and there's a part of us, our soul and our spirit, that we can't see. I can take blood out or I can take saliva out, but I can't see your spirit and your soul the same way. And so a lot of what I do, I'm not a counselor per se, I'm not a licensed counselor, but a lot of what I'm doing is interpreting what their body is communicating to them. And that's the beauty about the journey that both of us are on and that all your listeners are on, is that we all start. I started out as the kid that was eating a donut and drinking Pepsi. Okay, that was breakfast. And I'm not that person, nor have any of my children been raised that way. They don't know that lifestyle. And part of that was because the Lord showed me a more abundant life step by step, and we made little changes that became big changes that became a lifestyle that other people will not have to repeat the past, but rather expand into their future. And that's what I would wish for all of these people that are listening, is that they just begin that journey towards that abundant life.
Amen. Dr. Gina Anderson, this has been a wonderful, quick time that we've spent together, well, rich, full of information. He said, in the word, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And you know what? He's aligning us to be, and I don't want to say that we're a remnant, but there's an awakening that happens with a remnant, that we have to go back and wake others, and really awakening the spirit, soul, and body connection. This is powerful. Well, everyone, I hope that you got something rich from the start of this conversation. Please stick with us. It is even amazing how we align, because God gave me that. That's where He wants us to be. I didn't wake up with the bridge. I didn't wake up with, He really wants us to be. He said, I would that you prosper and be in good health as well as your soul prosper. And so this morning, this is for you to hear. If you don't receive it, it's because you don't want to. And my prayer is that you are awakened, and you have ears to hear what thus said the Lord. So not to be really spiritual or deep about it, but it's time to wake up and be all that God has called you to be. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time as we continue this conversation around immune health. Bless you. Have a great day.